So when Matt sent out the announcements for this Pecha Kucha Day, I was really excited because I thought, well, hey, I like food. And he had a blurb on there about photography, and photography has sort of changed the way that I see the world, so I wanted to talk about that too. So I used this as an opportunity to do that. But I also wanted to acknowledge the way that I became a photographer, and that is that I found out that, I've never told anybody this before in public. I'm going blind. I have a form of macular degeneration that affects young people. And so this is one of the pictures that I've taken of Taos. What you see on the left is what you see, and what you see on the right is what I see when I look through my dominant eye, which is most of the time. I have to wait for it to stop. When I freaked out, because I'm an architect and how can I be a blind architect, the doctor suggested to me that I get a camera and start taking pictures and use them like flashcards so that when I did go blind, I would remember what the world looked like. So I did, and my first pictures were pretty bad. But I've practiced a lot, and so I thought I would show you some of the things that had happened. And when I was preparing this, I was reading this book called The Happiness Hypothesis, where Jonathan Haidt says, he's talking about pleasure versus gratification. Pleasures should be both savored and varied. The French know how to do this. They eat fatty foods, yet end up thinner and healthier than Americans. They derive a great deal more pleasure from their food by eating slowly and paying more attention to the food as they eat it. Because they savor, they eat less. They vary their pleasure by serving small courses. And then he says, Epicurus endorsed the French way when he said that a wise man chooses not the greatest quantity of food, but the most tasty. For those that don't know who Epicurus was, he was a philosopher about 23 centuries ago in Greece. His school laid the foundations of modern science, and in fact, it's his idea that inspired Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the Epicurean ideal incarnate. So, the passage in Haidt inspired me and made me curious about this Epicurus guy because I'd heard about him before. And I wanted to talk about how I learned about Epicureanism by applying the rules of photography and learning to be a better photographer by working through architecture. So this is Eggs Benedict that Louis Costabel at Adobe and Pines made me for breakfast one morning, and it uses an architectural concept called massing, using different shapes to create more visual interest. This really piqued my curiosity because I found out over time that beautiful food makes me want to eat more beautiful things. So I go places where I eat. I found out that I have two ways of eating. One that's just eating, which is always about my soul. I'm just like, I just want to go eat something yummy. But the food I hardly ever take photographs of this food, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I do take photographs of kind of more beautiful food. The stuff that I like to photograph is what I would call well-designed. It's all about texture and color and the layering, and it tends to be a little bit more expensive. I guess I learned how to savor. Photography made food for me more about a visual appeal and about taste. I was more into the experience. So I started shifting my priorities, my fiscal priorities, moving money from one part of my budget to another so that I could enjoy more food. Food became something I was willing to sacrifice for. But when I would go to the store and I wouldn't find anything all that appealing a lot of the time, and like the cherries at the opening of this talk, I was always looking for something kind of perfect or the perfect dessert. And I went out in search of that, and I actively pursue that in my eating now. I also wanted to know where my food was coming from, and so I started taking my camera to the farmer's market, and I became totally infatuated with foods that I would never normally eat. I can honestly tell you that I had never eaten an eggplant, and I took this picture, and I was like, what is that thing about? And I would get food in me. My friends would have something in their bags, or a complete stranger would have something in their bag, and I would like stalk them and be like, where did you get that? And I would take photographs of things like, these are green almonds. I don't know what you do with them, but they're beautiful. And I would leave myself homework for, like, this is something I need to know about. I even started paying attention to the way that light would fall across the table and the things that I was eating, and the bubbles would dance up to the top of champagne. And now presentation means something, and I love to open a bottle of something knowing that it's going to get poured, because that's part of the excitement, which is kind of funny. I really did learn to savor, I guess. Food also became food photography also encouraged me to start thinking about food when I was preparing it for people. I would think about the end game, what I wanted it to look like. And it made me much more present in preparation. And I thought that was kind of an interesting little side effect of what I was doing. The other thing that happened was I started using food as a form of artistic expression, which I never thought would happen. I was in Portland at the Japanese tea garden, and they brought out this umeboshi plum pastry, and there was this 200-year-old bench with a sliver of light falling on it, and I did a study in the middle of this tea house about food. The super cool thing that has been a really cool side effect that I wasn't expecting from this is that, I would post my stuff on Yelp, or I would post it on Facebook, and eventually it would get picked up. And so now it's been in newspapers, and it's been on TV, and I've even had some kind of shishi reviews in some fancy magazines. And that is how going blind and picking up a camera taught me how to be an epicurean.